republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on this January 6th meeting. Katie, could I get a roll call, please?
You may. Councilperson Bentley?
Here.
Bruns?
Here.
Flynn? Morrissey?
Here.
Soha?
Present.
Stucho? Wolfram?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Galladino?
Here.
You have 6 present.
Thank you. Hope everyone who isn't here is doing well. Okay, approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes for the agenda?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I have 3 pieces of communication that I would like to add, just under the communication. The first is the Kristen Townsend Warren Grant Award press release that we received today from the Hillsdale Community Foundation. The second is a letter from Shannon Gaynor in regards to the airport and road repair construction. And the third would be a letter from the Economic Development Partnership of Hillsdale County in support of the airport. Those 3 letters of communication. You do have copies at your seats.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Do I have a motion to add the Hillsdale County letter under Communications F, Shannon Gaynor's letter under Communications G, and the EDC letter under Communications H?
So moved. Support.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved. Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Pope. I didn't say that last time. I'm sorry. You got it? Okay, thank you. You're paying attention. Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Let's move into public comments on agenda items. Please speak on agenda items only. The podium is open.
It's kind of sad for the citizens of Hillsdale and embarrassed for the council that someone had asked a question about the road diet. Didn't seem to know much about it. It's been going on for years. It also tells me that the people that ask that question do not read the minutes of any of the other board meetings or committee meetings whatsoever. Planning Commission's been working on it. Last month, the Planning Commission actually spoke about it, had drawings on it in their meeting and in their packet. So I don't understand why someone on the council would even ask a question like that. It's kind of, yeah, you didn't start it, that's okay, I'm just gonna be a second. It's kind of embarrassing. I think they would be embarrassed for even asking the questions. I mean, it shows that they have no real interest in the city itself as far as what's going on and what the other committees are doing and that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Hi, Shannon. How you doing?
Better, been really sick, so.
Oh, sorry about that.
You guys all got my letter already. Also, when I was going through back and reading minutes and things like that, I do ask you not to approve the $105,000 for the new airport hangar doors. Something I ran across today was capital improvement plan, where they plan on demolishing the airport hangars that are already out there. It's in the plan. So if you're gonna demolish something, why are you gonna put new doors on it? It says back here in 2025, hangar complex design, 26, taxi lane hangar complex construction, 27, demolish existing terminal and hangar facilities, $662,000. And then all the way up to 28, we're gonna spend another $2,184,000 on the taxiway and everything. So if you're gonna demolish something, Why are you putting more money into it? On top of that, when I ran across that same capital improvement budget, you guys should read it back in August. We're only giving $600,000 a year for our streets. So we have over $1 million going to an airport, and according to this, $600,000 every year has only been budgeted for our streets. So I'm asking you not to put more money into something that you're going to demolish in a couple of years anyway. What a waste of money. And how are we gonna recoup that money? As I was reading the budget going down, he gave a plan of how they could recoup it, but never stated exactly which plan he's gonna pick. Also, at previous meetings, I've been here and I've asked them for a schedule on how they're going to make the airport self-sufficient. They said at that time a plan did not exist, and it still does not exist. So we're putting all this money into the airport, but nobody has a plan on how it's ever going to be self-sufficient. So I'm just asking you, don't keep putting money into this without a plan on how it's going to be self-sufficient. And if you're going to demolish something, why are we putting more into it now? Thanks.
Sky Sessions 102 Cold Spring Circle. I would like to acknowledge the importance of the need to fill the vacancy for the mayor of Hillsdale. In the past, as being a former mayor, I've experienced vacancies from other city council members who have left the city before their terms were up. It does create problems, especially when you have a city council member who steps down, creating an absent position on council and not representing the residents that they were elected to support. In this case, it is the mayor and the mayor's position, which covers the entire city. Any absence on the city council deprives the residents of full representation to the city of Hillsdale. I would ask that each of you vote in favor of an election to replace the mayor of Hillsdale. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Okay. On the airport question, does council mind if we respond to that brief? Oh no, we're talking about the airport later. It's on the agenda. Talk about it then. Okay, consent agenda. We have approval of bills, city and BPU claims of December 12th, payroll of December 19th, city council minutes of December 16th, finance minutes of December 16th, O&G minutes of December 12th, Board of Review December 2024 minutes, and airport land lease. Any comments or questions about the consent agenda? All set? Motion to approve?
So moved. Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Let's move into communications petitions. Letter A. We have should we wait for Dave to come back for this? Since someone just asked about the, oh wait, what letter am I on? Oh, okay, never mind, that's letter B. We have curbside collection of Christmas trees will take place on Monday, January 13th. Natural trees only must be placed at the curb area by 7 a.m. Monday, January 13th. No artificial trees will be accepted, no brush, leaves, anything else, just real Christmas trees. Any other comments on that? All set. Letter B, the road diet plan. I've had some questions about that. Dave, would you like to say anything about it?
Yes, thank you. So the plan is, part of it is for public comment. So the idea behind the road diet is to slow traffic down. in the downtown district. So as Mr. McLean had indicated, the Planning Commission had been looking at this for quite some time, and they're to the point of presenting to the public for comment. That being said, the date is on the flyer, but what it would do down Hillsdale Street is reduce it from 4 lanes to 3, with the center lane being a turn lane, and what's that?
Broad Street.
Oh yeah, Broad Street, excuse me. And then there would be additional landscaping along the corridor to help with beautification of the downtown. Mr. Morrissey, was there anything else that you recall?
No, I think that just come to the meeting and get all your questions answered.
Any questions or comments? Don't forget the bike lanes, of course. Okay, letter C. Hospital request responses to community health needs assessment. Okay, so they, I guess, just want us to take the assessment in the packet here. They say it contains 40 questions, demographic, health, healthcare, experience questions. So go ahead and do that for the hospital. Tell them what you need. D, Comcast programming letter. You can look at that if you have Comcast. Any thoughts on that? All set?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Councilman Soha.
Just my thoughts on the Comcast letter. They continually raise their prices and have ire among their the people who are signed up for their programming. I had 2 people today tell me they wished that there was an alternative source of internet, so I would encourage ACD or any other entities out there that can provide internet service to do so. Get some competition.
Very good. Anything else? On cable. Okay. Letter F added to the agenda. Kristen Townsend Warren Grant Award winner announced. Manager Mackey?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So the school district in the city of Hillsdale received a grant award in regards to the school resource officer vehicle. There was work done to design a special logo and outfitting kind of graphics for that, and the Community Foundation did make an award. So you have a copy of that at your seats, and then we add it to the packet, but it shows the Hillsdale Hornet logo and the police vehicle, and that's what that grant was for, to outfit the SRO vehicle.
Okay, great. You'll see the Hillsdale Hornet police vehicle in the coming weeks, months. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I believe you skipped letter E.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Commissioner Ingalls, I apologize.
It's fine, I'm here today.
Oh, there wasn't a link for it. I was scrolling rather than looking through the agenda. Always a danger. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and City Manager. A couple of things coming up. The scaffolding, you'll notice, is completely down at the courthouse. Trucks today even have removed much of the equipment from the courthouse parking lot, and we'll be finished soon with that project. Multi-year, I'm glad to be done with it, and we'll be moving to the next project, I'm sure, of which there are many that we're working on. We did have our organizational meeting last Thursday. Commissioner Wiley was re-elected chair, Commissioner Benzing vice chair. Committee assignments remain the same, with new Commissioner Collins being appointed to Human Services. My committees do remain the same: facilities, IT, and economic development. Also the Road Commission and Parks trustee, liaison to the trustees. I have been working quite extensively on trying to fill slots for the Materials Management Committee, to find representatives from the jurisdictions to that committee. I have Hillsdale County Commissioner, Jonesville City Council, Litchfield City Council, Ransom Township Transfer Station, Scipio Township Trustee, Jefferson Township Transfer Station, and LRS have confirmed their interest, and their appointments will be made. No application yet from City-Hillsdale, so I'm hoping for that as well. That completes my report for today. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the update. Could you just remind us what the committee was you're looking?
Materials Management Planning Committee. By statute, state has dictated essentially to the counties that we need to establish a materials management plan different from a waste disposal plan. And so we're moving forward with that. There's a timeline that's been projected from Eagle, and we're working to fulfill that.
When do you need the application?
2 weeks ago. Please. Thank you. My hope is to have initial orientation meeting yet in January. And so these spots are, we need an 11-member committee. And if I can have 7 or 8, that gives me enough to get something going. And so we want to start the ball rolling so that we can fulfill that timeline. So.
Great, thank you. Dave, did you have something to add there?
Yes, just in regards to the committee, I believe Jason was actually supposed to be getting his application to you like in the next day or so. That for the council, if they remember, Mayor Pro Tem Palladino had volunteered for that committee before the stepping down of Mayor Stopford. So given his other duties, we discussed it, and Jason had indicated that he would be willing to step up on that. So that's how we got to Jason Blake.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. Any updates? What did you learn from your meeting about the jail?
So it's very involved and very, lot of levels and pressures in every way. The conversation has started, and we'll see where it ends. Ultimately, a new jail is in our future. When that will happen, we don't know. Probably not in the next 3 or 4 years. The county has many other commitments to try and work through as well. The public safety aspect involves the courts, involves prosecutor, involves the sheriff, involves our community. And so the process, in order to be very correctly done, needs to go through all the steps. In the short term, it's possible that there are Lenawee County or Branch County facilities that could be utilized. That's yet to be discussed, but that's kind of a nuts and bolts quick.
Great, that'd be wonderful if you could find some money in the budget to use Branch or Lenawee in the interim.
Yes, new jail is going to be $30 million, thereabouts. It's not just the money of housing the inmates in another jail. That aspect of it is the least of the cost, probably. Transportation is part of the program, and does the jail that we take those folks to have staff and facilities, medical supervision? You know, there's a lot of layers. You can't just take somebody there. They have to be prepared to handle it as well. And so all of those questions need to be asked and need to be addressed. And that's the path we're on, to try and figure it out.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Ingles. Any other questions for the Commissioner? We're all set. Sorry about that. Okay. Not yes, thank you, Councilman Bruns. Now we are on G. And this is a letter from Mrs. Gaynor about special assessments and the hangar, and we will discuss that momentarily unless there are any specific comments or questions about the letter. Yes, Councilman Morrissey.
There's one question right at the end here about the propane, the Spratz Trading Post propane and hangar $372. Does the renter pay for the propane to heat their space? And maybe the city manager knows whether they do or not.
Steve?
Which
I see you're in the back. It says big hangar. I'm not sure exactly which hangar that is, but the big hangar, corporate two,
Corporate two.
we pay for the
is
propane.
that's our building for all of our snow removal equipment, maintenance facility, we pay that gas bill. As far as corporate one hangar, Tom pays his own gas.
Yes. So that's not the big hangar. The big hangar, Councilman Morrissey, we actually own and we pay for the propane, but the smaller hangar is paid for by the tenant.
That's correct. And then the maintenance hangar, the rent has been increased to help compensate for the gas used there.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Letter H. The EDC sent us a letter.
Hey Josh, can we back up to hangar two? Real quick, okay.
In a minute, we can talk about that on the agenda. Where was that? Letter H. The EDC partnership of Hillsdale County sent a letter to Ginger Moore expressing their support for the airport. You will also be able to find that, not in the packet, but in the minutes in a few days if you would like to read that. Any comments or questions about that letter? Councilman Soha.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. It's my understanding that some of the corporations that utilize the airport were discussing this with Susan Smith, and which, because of their dismay that there's a possibility of forgive me, there's the possibility that the airport hangar construction plans might fail, and that they were not pleased because it's a big part of the economic development for the city. For example, big companies like Ritz-Craft and Jonesville chose Jonesville because of Hillsdale's airport and the vicinity, and so that's why Susan wrote the letter, and to my understanding, in support of the effort.
Oh, does this have to do with the hangars today?
Yes, it does, just in general support for the development of the airport, but it does have to do with the hangars, because corporate hangar number two is owned by one of those businesses. For example, Meyer, when they come to town, they fly into the airport, Hillsdale College, so all the members, the broad members of Hillsdale County Economic Development Partnership, there are many that benefit from the airport, I guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I requested this construction plan just a few weeks ago, so that's interesting that they know about it. Okay, good.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilman Wolfram.
Are we to assume that every member of the board of directors is essentially signing on to the letter that Susan Smith said? Like, for example, Doug Inglis, right? So, it does say it's the Economic Development Partnership of Hillsdale County, and it has the board of directors here. So I was just wondering if they're all included.
Yes, are you considering yourself a signatory?
So I can't see that letter, I have not seen it, but I would think that that's letterhead that lists the board of directors.
Seems right.
And I would think that Councilperson Wolfman does not mean that we have discussed or signed on.
Okay.
That's a letter from Sue Smith.
Yes.
Yes, signed by Executive Director Susan Smith.
I just wanted to make sure that was.
Thank you, Councilman Wolfram. Any further comments or questions? Okay, we have no introduction and adoption of ordinances or public hearings. We have no old business. We'll move into new business. Letter A, mayoral vacancy election. Okay, so we've gone back and forth about this. There is a new interpretation from our lawyer now. So when we first held the mayor pro tem election, the thought was that this was going to be until November 2026. The statute says that it should be filled, the charter says that it should be filled at the next regular state election. That was initially interpreted to mean when the state holds an election, but now if you would like to explain the new interpretation.
Well, so the original, the charter says what it says. At the next regular state election, we consulted with the county clerk and said, what is considered to be the next regular state election? He interpreted that question to be, when is the next election when the state has candidates or issues on the ballot, which would be in 2026, November 2026. That seemed kind of odd to me, because if you could only fill a vacancy once every 2 years, that would make it really difficult when you had midterm vacancies under the city's charter provision. So I went back and looked at the state election law, because I was pretty sure the term regular election appears somewhere in there. And so sure enough it does. There's a provision that actually lists for the state of Michigan the regular election dates each year. And there's one in May, there's one in August, and there's one in November each year. If you look at that in conjunction with the point of the provision, which is to fill a midterm vacancy in a council seat or the mayor position from the city charter, I think the better way to read that is that when it uses the term regular election, it's referring to that section in the statute. Those are the regular election dates that the state of Michigan provides for, and that it should be on one of those dates. The next one will be in May. So that was after my going back and looking at the statute, because again, like the county clerk typically only deals with those elections, so I think that's what the clerk's office had indicated when we did that. So
Yeah, what is the word state doing in there?
well, because the state of this has to do with the tortured way that the state has dealt with through legislation election dates, particularly for local offices and for things like school boards, municipalities. So if you look through the charter, there are other charter provisions that reference municipal elections, the city elections. The state has over the years, probably the last, I want to say decade and a half, has passed various statutes that have tried to push more of the local elections toward the November general election date, when there's going to be a slate of candidates for a whole host of other things on the ballot. For example, like with school board, and the way they would do that is they would pass a statute, or they have passed statutes at various points in time, and then they keep feeding back onto them with different dates where they say, you can by resolution if you are a village, or if you are a city, or if you are a township or a school board, and your terms are set to expire on odd years, right? So your terms are 4 years, expiring on the odd year, and are to be filled at the election in May or whenever it might be, that you can pass a resolution to extend out the terms or redo the terms for your offices, not by ordinance, not by charter provision, but just by passing a resolution in most instances, where you basically reset the dates that all of your people's terms expire on a particular board, and then have them expire at that November election. The idea being that a lot of municipalities would take advantage of that, or school boards, so that they would get the benefit of just being on the regular election, not having to fund their own local election. So because of that, if you were to look at your charter and some of the other provisions, like for example, the one that deals with primary elections, it's referring to things that don't exist anymore, like the local city election, the regular May city election. Those don't exist because you've changed the dates for those elections pursuant to those other statutes by way of resolution and otherwise, so that your terms all hit on that November election date, right? So that is part of the difficulty with trying to navigate this. So when they're referring to state election, the only other place that term appears is in the general election law, where they say these are the state election dates. And it has those 3 dates during the year. And there's also a provision that says that if you have an election for a local office for a city, for example, it's to be determined by the city charter. Because cities and villages and townships each have different legislation, and county boards of commissioners and school districts that deal with how their members are elected and how long their terms are and how many people are on the board, there's actually a separate provision for each one of those types of entities. So for cities, it says it's according to your charter if you have a charter, right? So the problem is your charter, again, references things that don't exist anymore. That's part of the issue with determining whether or not and when you would have a primary. So the only thing that's for sure, I think, is that there are 3 state election dates. There is a reference in your charter to the next regular state election. Those 3 dates are considered regular state election dates. So that makes some sense in terms of being able to fill a position. The question then becomes, if you need to have a primary, when would you have the primary? I think the language in the charter about when you would have the primary is kind of almost written out of existence in a way, from a timing standpoint, just because of the other things I just referenced in terms of all the changes to the terms and when you typically would have your election. So basically, it's a big spaghetti mess, but I think that the clear thing is one of those 3 election dates, you would have your election to fill the mayor's position, and the next one, if you go by the charter, would be in May.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was looking at the election law. I saw regular election, state election, no regular state election. But I guess, yeah, you can intuit what that means. This is another thing we can add to our charter reform list. This could be a lot more clear. The next possible state election would make sense. But yes, we need to reform this charter. It's about 20 years old. I think actually Commissioner Ingalls was a part of that. This was a generation ago, right?
Well, that was a generation ago. Whether that was one of my items, I have to dig into my archives. There's a lot of cobwebs on some of that, so.
Maybe time for anyone. Any thoughts on this? Any questions? Any comments? Councilman Bentley.
3 points. It's fair to say it's ambiguous.
I don't think it's ambiguous because, again, the only place where the term regular election appears is in the state election law, and it sets forth those 3 regular state election dates. It doesn't use the term regular state election dates, but it sets out 4, except as otherwise provided in this section, an election held under this act, which is the Michigan election law, shall be held on one of the following regular election dates. And there's the May, the August, and the November each year. So that's as close as you can get to matching up the language between the charter and state law as for when state elections are held.
So I think it's self-evidently ambiguous. And all the laws in the chart, it all disagrees. So, and I think part of the confusion is they're establishing the dates. So regular election dates, the intent is different than the next regular election. That's how I read it. Be that as it may. Can we all agree that this is our decision?
Sure. I look at it typically when I'm looking at something like this, like from the standpoint of, based upon my experience, what do I know is the way that courts generally interpret these things, right? So if someone were to challenge how you chose to do something, how do I think a court would take a look at this language? I think the court probably would go through the same kind of analysis I just did, which is, it says the next regular state election, state law provides that any state election held in the state is going to be on one of these 3 regular election dates, and probably come to that conclusion would be the next one of those dates that would appear. Could you argue if you chose to do something different? It depends what that thing is that you chose to do and how different it was as to whether or not I could sustain it if somebody challenged it. I can't tell you that unless I knew the specifics and unless somebody actually challenged it and told me what grounds they're gonna try and challenge it. If you understand what I'm getting. So all I can do is give you advice based upon kind of what I think the way that would be analyzed by a court would be if it had to be challenged. You're free to do whatever you wanna do, it's my opinion, you're the legislative body. As I've said before, you can choose to ignore our opinions if you want to. And if somebody challenges it, we'll do our best to sustain the decision you make.
I'm sorry, one last thing. Can you characterize your recommendation as strong, super strong?
So yes, I think I just indicated, I think the one thing that is fairly clear is that it should be, as I read it, probably the May election. Now, the question becomes, what if you have petitions that put out where you have more than 3 people apply for the job? Under the charter, you're supposed to have a primary, narrow it down to 2. In that instance, I don't think you have to stick with the language in the charter because it really does not match up with the way the state election law currently sits. I think from that standpoint, you could treat the May regular election date as your primary date, and the August regular election date as the date when you're going to have the election, if you have more than 2 people who file valid petitions. I can't give it, this isn't one where I can look at it and say definitively it says you're going to do this, but I think it's fairly definitive in terms of one of those 3 dates would be the date that you have to fill it, and it says in the charter the next regular election date. So that would be, I'm fairly confident that you should do that.
Well, that's my hang-up, though. It doesn't say the next regular election date. It says the next regular election in the charter.
Well, but
Regular state election.
regular
State
state
election,
election,
the confusing
Not
word.
date. The word date is missing.
yeah, and that was, I had a discussion with the deputy clerk about that, right? That is an issue, the language doesn't exactly match up, but it does mention the term next regular state election. And in the state law, it says elections shall be held on these dates in the state of Michigan. Now, again, I can't tell you this is definitive, but courts, this is why they study law school for 3 years, right? Because there is a set of rules that courts are to apply in looking at legislation and what those terms mean. My guess is, knowing the judge you would have here, and knowing the way that this probably would be analyzed, that's likely, although not guaranteed, to be the way that a court would look at it if they had to. Does that mean anything? Probably not, in terms of someone would have to challenge it. I'm not quite sure what the basis of the challenge would be, in that if you chose to do it later, you just had the seat empty, for why, you see what I mean? So what is the damage or the harm here, other than you just didn't have a mayor for a few months? If you were stretching it out to that November 2026 general election date, I think I would have a hard time arguing that that's the intent of all those provisions and the intent of the provision in your charter. Because that means, again, so I'm gonna go, the judge is gonna say, so you mean to tell me that the only time you could fill a midterm vacancy would be literally either the middle of the term or when the term had expired, right? Well, that doesn't make any sense, because you're gonna have up to, it's here, almost a 2-year gap where you don't have anybody in that position, and what the people are entitled to have their representative there. You could freeze out somebody in a ward if the council, if a council seat were left open for 2 years or a year and a half or a year, the people in that ward are only getting half the representation they're entitled to during that period. So I think that would be more difficult to sustain if you pushed it out like that. I think it's a little easier if you say, okay, well, we're gonna treat May as the primary and August as the election date. Given what I just talked about, I think you can do that, and what's the alternative, right? Given the timing constraints you would have with you'd have to get the petitions in by the end of January, then have turn around under the charter language and have a primary in March, and then turn around and have the election in May. That would be pretty tough to do, and I don't know that that serves anybody. And given that there are 3 election dates for elections in the state law, or the general election law, I think you can make that fly. And I don't think the Bureau of Elections would have any problem with that. If you did the May primary and the August election to fill the seat.
Okay, very good. Councilman Wolfram.
Is it possible that you would do a primary, that if you had 5 people running and then you just run them all in one election in August?
Except your charter says that you're supposed to narrow it down. It says you're supposed to have a primary if you have more than 2. Okay. The issue with that is when do you have the primary? Because it's got language about doing it in the March before the city election, which there isn't.
Do we have an example of a special election in which more than 2 people have filed? In your memory, Katie? No. Okay, any other thoughts? Councilman Morrissey?
As far as the special elections are concerned, the first time I was elected was for a 1-year unexpired term of the previous council member. So they can do that and have done it in the past. And then I was still eligible for 2 regular terms after that, because it was only a year. As far as the May date is concerned, I think that's would be very unfair to anyone. I don't intend to run for mayor. I can put that on the table right away in case anyone's curious. But I think it would be very unfair to prospective candidates to give them 2 weeks to get a petition going in the middle of January, which is the worst weather of the year. I think if we're going to do a special election, it would be the earliest would be August. It seems to me. If that's, I don't know if that's legal or not, but that would be the earliest I would want to do it. Give people a chance to organize themselves and get their petitions in and have a fair election.
And I think that you can make an argument that that's sustainable for the reasons I just talked about, right? Because of the difficulty timing-wise, because of the deadlines the state sets by which the petitions have to be filed and that sort of thing. So I think when you're looking at the term, can I make the argument that next election means, for purposes of this, August? Okay. Because of those timing issues. And you're gonna run into those, certainly your charter would anticipate that, and certainly state law anticipates that, because you don't know when the vacancy is gonna occur, right? You could have one that occurred 2 days before the petition deadline that the state sets, even though the election's in May, the petition deadline's in January. Well, by the letter of the charter, you theoretically would have the election in May, but as a practical standpoint, you couldn't really do it.
Katie, or we have Abe here, how long do citizens normally get to fill out petitions for regularly scheduled elections?
Usually it's what, 2 months,
Oh, 2 months.
roughly.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Bentley?
What does it cost the city and or the county to run a special election?
The cost of an election is about $6,000 to the city. And we have our new budget starts July 1, so anything after that will be on next budget. Anything before that is on our current budget.
And I will say early voting doesn't include local, so that cost would be, it's state or federal, they do, but locally don't.
Okay,
So
we're having nothing but special elections from here on out. Okay. Any other thoughts? One other thing to consider, if a member of council wins in August, then we have to have another special election. So we could potentially have a primary, a general, and then the next election after that would be a primary election citywide. So we'd run 5 elections in a row. I'm so sorry. Okay, any other comments? Councilman Soha.
Tom, thanks for your explanation. What action do we need to take tonight, if any?
So if you're gonna have the election in May, I think you would have to set the election for May, because you have that petition deadline at the end of the month. And there's a limited amount of time by which, I think already you've only got 2 weeks, right? So if you were gonna do it in May, you would have to do it now. If you were going to choose to do it later, then it's not such a pressing issue. And by the way, just so you know, that Mayor Pro Tem Palladino did reference charter amendments. I will tell you, there are other cities within this county that have charters that provide, for example, when the mayor dies or resigns, and there's a mayoral vacancy, the mayor pro tem becomes the mayor, and then they have a special election just to fill the council seat that the mayor pro tem vacated to become the mayor. So there are ways to address this that don't require having to fill potentially multiple spots.
Well, we're here now. Yeah, I saw the Litchfield and Reading, they just appoint their next council member. Consider that, yes.
So could we, if, let's say, Mayor Pro Tem Palladino puts his hat in the ring to be for the mayoral election and we learn that, is there a possibility of a contingent election for if his seat is vacated, so we could do them simultaneously?
No, because his seat wouldn't be vacated unless he became the mayor.
Well, that's my point. So you'd be there if he wins, but if he doesn't win, thanks for your effort.
Yep, yeah, you can't do that, unfortunately. If you win, you win, it is your seat, so.
Thank you. Well, I would submit then, so we have a full council with, hopefully Bob and Greg will be here on the 21st. Let's push this off until the 21st and consider voting on it for an August primary.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So then that, I guess that's, do I need to make a motion to do that, or?
I don't think we have an August election on the table right now.
And did anybody actually make a motion to do anything with this? So you're just at discussion at this point. You actually don't have to do anything with it. It's an agenda item, but you don't have to make a motion.
Does anyone insist on a May election? I don't think anyone here likes the May election. Feels like a way to sneak things past the citizens.
And it's only 2 weeks, Mayor Pro Tem, it's not fair.
2 weeks isn't great. Okay. Do I have a motion? Does not seem so. Okay, good. Thank you, Katie, and yeah.
I'm sorry, I would like to request the city put this on the January 21st agenda.
Yes, let's add that to this old business to discuss an August primary election. Okay. Now, if we do it ahead of time, do we have to declare it as a primary?
Actually, the one thing that I think does still stick in terms of the way your charter addresses it is your charter only requires the primary if you get petitions for more than, in this case for the mayor, 2 people. So if you don't have more than 2 candidates, you would set it as an election. If the clerk gets petitions for more than that, you would come back and then you would designate it as a primary. I think that's the approach to take.
Okay. Yes, Councilman Soha.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. If we just had the election in August, there was only 2 that submitted their applications to run, and Mr. Smith wins, when would Mr. Smith be sworn in?
After the election. There's a provision that I don't remember what it is, but
The
I think
Monday after the election?
Monday after the election.
Oh, well, we can't, oh no, you can probably certify it in that amount of time, right? Without all the state requirements?
That would be the county that certifies, but.
Oh, it still requires that county certification, which
So-
would, okay.
Yeah, so once the election was certified, then you would be able to swear in whoever.
So probably 2 Mondays from the election. Okay. All right, great. What are we on? New business B? Okay, the Special Assessment District for street projects. This is for Arch and Monroe and Berry. Dave, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to ask the city engineer to come up. We put together a brief presentation just to kind of remind the council and the new council about where we stand with road funding and members of the audience who haven't maybe heard this before. But, so I asked the city engineer to put this together and I'll have her walk through it. Council, you do have this information at your seat in front of you.
Thank you all. As Mr. Mackey was saying, that we worked through this today just to get an idea. Yeah, thank you. Just to represent to you, because I keep hearing through social media and different other forums about how much money we have for streets. I'm not sure where that's coming from. However, what I put together and what you have in front of you is kind of the before and after when we started doing special assessments and we had the voted millage. So on the left side of this spreadsheet, those are in 2024 numbers, because they're, as far as the Act 51 money is current day. We receive for the major streets from our Act 51 money, which is the gas tax that the state implements and gives to us every month of the year, $934,000. Of that $934,000, that money, if you read Act 51, says it's for maintenance of the roads, managing streetlights, signs, traffic markings, potholes, everything that's within the public right-of-way, that's and sidewalks and all that stuff, is what that money is for initially. It's not for construction projects, it's for maintaining what you have, plowing the streets and all that stuff. So operationally, of that $934,000, the Department of Public Services, to do their normal maintenance, and when I first got here 5 years ago, I ran this out, and I've run these departments in multiple cities, ran out a 10-year history, and their operational costs for the 10 years is pretty consistent, obviously with rate of inflation and what have you. So their yearly operating is $580,000. So when you take the administrative costs, which is monies that is allowed to go to the general fund to offset the cost of the accounting or the finance department for dealing with these funds, that plus the operating expenses, it leaves you $260,000 of available funds for projects and what have you. Then we go to the local street side. We receive far less money in the local street side. Act 51 actually says that cities should, if they're going to do a construction project with local street funds on local streets, the city is supposed to match that money. So we get $292,000 once we remove the operating expenses for the local streets and the administrative funds. We're at a negative $150,000. We also have now a bond payment to pay for the Westwood project, which is $353,000. So when it's all said and done, we're at a negative $500,000 in the local street fund at the end of every year, depending on what the operating expenses are. So the charter in this city allows for 2.5 mils for street funds, and it is earmarked, I believe, in the charter for street funds, and that's $405,000. Historically, that money has been used to balance the local street fund, and then you have a little left over for projects. Well, in this case, we're negative $499,000. We have $405,000 in that charter, so we're still negative money. We are allowed by Act 51 to transfer some monies from major to local, so we would transfer $100,000. That would leave us $6,000 in the local street fund for projects. So before we started the millage and special assessment districts, we effectively had $106,000 for projects. Then the right side, what I did is take the same monies, I applied in the green box on the very far right. This is what the voted street millage was, that's $575,000. And the average of the 3 years that we've been doing special assessments, our yearly average for special assessment districts, we received $408,000. So those two numbers now offset all of those negatives, and we would end up with the $260,000 on the major street side of available funds for possible capital projects, and just shy of $900,000 of other revenue that we could do projects with, which is what we've been operating on for doing the projects that we've done over the last 5 years. So that tells that story. Obviously, the city can do anything they want with general funds, or general fund monies to put it towards streets, but that's over and above what these funds, which is what we operate on. I don't usually look at anything from general fund, because usually they just, if they get allocated, a lot of times I've seen them get spent somewhere else when an emergency comes about, and so they're not available for roads. So in the mix of budgeting and future work, we just don't put it in the mix, because you can't guarantee it'll be there in any given year. And we have to start planning projects at least a year in advance of when we do them. The next page, what I did, when I was with another municipality, we went through an exercise when it came to our tax bill. Because a lot of things that I hear are, I pay my taxes, that should go towards roads. Well, so what I did was I broke down the tax bill. The tax bill that everybody receives at their house is 60 mills. That 60 mills is not just the city. That's the county, that's the school districts, that's the seniors, that's because we are the collections people for all of the county villages. So of that 60 mills, 21 mills is what actually comes to the city. So and I had the tax assessor give me what an average tax bill is in the city. It's around 3,000, plus or minus, residential only, I'm not talking commercial. So of that $3,000 tax bill, just over $1,000 is what comes to the city for the general fund. Of that $1,000, in the next two columns, you can see I broke out the 2.5 mils for the roads and the millage for the roads, the voted millage and the charter millage. So that total comes out of the $1,000, $300, and I'm talking a year, comes towards the roads from each residential average bill. So that adds up in the end to this $9 million that was on the first spreadsheet for the charter and the street millage. So I just wanted people to understand that, in all the years I've been doing municipal work, even when we went through this exercise in the other municipality, I was surprised because I just hadn't really wrapped my head around the fact that that bill is not all money that stays with the city. It goes to other people, and we're collecting it and sending it off. Dave, what do you want to discuss next? Mr. Mackey? What do you want to do, this chart? Okay. Back when we started talking about doing special assessment districts, we have a program called Road Zone. Every year, the Department of Public Services and myself, we rate every mile or every block of every road within the city. That's a 1 to 10 rating. We've talked about this in the past. We have to rate the defects that we see on the street. Could be cracks, elevator. There's a whole bunch of them. 10 is the best street. The whole Westwood subdivision as of today is now a 10. You can only reset roads to a 10 if there was a full reconstruction. What we did on St. Joe this year can be raised to a 9. It can't be a 10 because it was, the one block is a reconstruction, the other two are a 9. That's the highest it can go. This system is in very, very poor shape. Almost 75% of the streets in the system are under a 4, which is structurally failing. This graph kind of shows that back in 2020, we were saying, how much money do we need to turn these roads around? The blue graph is a do nothing. If we just sat there and said, we don't have any money, we're not going to do anything. That's the decline you're going to see in the roads as far as the remaining service life and the ratings. The red line is if you were applying 3 mils to the roads. The green line is 6 mils.
Excuse me, the 3 mils is excluding the 2.5 charter?
No, it's total.
Oh, okay, so the do nothing isn't really an option under the charter then because of the 2.5?
Yes, but your 2.5, we can discuss the cost of road construction. You're not doing a whole lot with $200,000.
Oh, right, I know. So the do nothing is just a representation. So if our do nothing is essentially the red line, a little bit worse than the red line?
The blue line is your do nothing. If we didn't apply any monies to any roads on any day,
Oh, don't we have to spend the 2.5 from the charter on roads though?
It goes towards the road budget, you don't have to spend it, no. I mean, if Jason were to have, Ms. Blake were to have a bad plow year, that charter money can be used for the overage on plowing.
Any sort of road
Any
maintenance, it
sort of
doesn't
road
have to be
maintenance.
earmarked for reconstructions or maintenance. Okay,
Correct.
good, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. The way I'm reading this, that it looks like the do nothing, and it has, is that number, when we get up to 2035, the number 20.82, what does that number represent?
So this chart is based on average remaining service life. When a road hits a 4 rating, that's 0 in its service life. It is now met where it's now going to go into what they call structural failure, which means you have to have a more expensive fix on the road. So if you get out to 2035, that's a negative 20.82.
Oh, it's a negative.
It is a negative number.
Oh.
So you're negative 20 years past that average service life.
Okay, I didn't notice that was a negative. So
Yeah,
I thought
there it's,
that seems
yeah,
like
white
a
on
lot,
white.
You're gonna have 20 years.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a negative number.
Yes, all of the ones, actually all of them are negative because our system is in that order shape.
Okay.
So that's kind of, this was where we, when we were looking at this back in 2021, or 20 and 21, this was the information I had. Our system is marginally better now. It's not significantly better. With the monies we've been putting forth in the last 3 years, we have been following somewhere between the red and the green lines. We've been staying pretty flat because obviously things decline, things are getting better. You know, the net ends up being somewhere around flat. And then Mr. Mackey had me print this off of, it's the current day after the ratings that we did this year, kind of where we stand with regard to, roll up to the graph if you would please. No, go back to the page.
Roll up, there's a pie chart. It's on the bottom side of that sheet, so I don't know if it's blown up.
Anyhow, you have it in front of you. There's a pie chart, and this. Keep going down there, I think. There you go. So anyway, what this pie chart, this was based off current ratings, the ratings that we did this year. We have about 2% of our roads have more than 10 years of life left in them, 5 to 10 years left, and 30% of our roads, and less than 5 years and 70%. And that kind of goes to what I said about the primary part of this system is in the poor condition. So we're trying to improve that.
And the more than 10 or the 5 to 10, that's without any maintenance?
Well, this is just based on the ratings that we had this year.
Okay.
This is current day numbers. These are a little bit older numbers, so we just ran this chart because this is based on the current ratings that we did in July of 24.
Okay.
Okay.
So some of those might be able to get more life years without total reconstructions.
Well, so this is where I kind of apply a lot of my experience. Because we are required to rate based on the defects we see. You know, if I go out and see cracks every 10 feet, that road is gonna be a 8 or a 7. Now, I can go out and take a look at a road, and this is just from 25 years of experience. I go out and take a look at a road, well, I'll use Berry Street as an example. I go out and look at Berry Street. Well, Berry Street's rated a 2 or a 3. So that by Pacer system says I need to do a structural reconstruction, which would be like what we did at one block of St. Joe. But I can go look at that road and go, this is really, really old asphalt. It's alligatored because it's been aged and never been fixed or rehabbed. The curbs are in great shape. There's really no reason to do a full reconstruction, and the base appears to be in very good condition. That being said, I can go out and say, yes, it's a 2, and Pacer says it should be a structural fix. We don't need that. We're going to mill and resurface it. So that's where we apply some of the engineering judgment, for lack of a better term. So the ratings are a little flexible, but if you go and look at Willow Street, Marion Street, sorry. If you go look at Marion Street, that road's completely failed. There's no base there. that has to be a total reconstruction. So that kind of project would be like what we did in Westwood and cost, I think I estimated that at like $1.8 million to do that entire length of road. So that's some of the things that we apply some engineering judgment to. And when we pick roads, we're looking at that stuff. You know, what's good, what's bad, what can we do, what can we do, do we have base failures, do we not? And select the appropriate fix. You can't go chip seal all the roads in the city because you'd be throwing good bad after bad. It's a cheaper fix, but you have to use it on roads where it's applicable. Same thing with road reconstructions and milling and resurfacing and the crush and shapes. That's why engineers do this. Any other questions?
Brandon, could you go back to the last slide, just on the funding needs? It's the last. That. So when we were originally looking, or council was at doing the special assessments, we were analyzing the data and looking at, okay, where can we at least get what we perceive to be a positive slope or positive direction towards total, moving the system towards repair. And that's why with the special assessments and the millage, it totals about 6 mils, which is what that green trajectory is. We're a little bit less than that, as Kristen said, it's somewhere.
We're around 5.
Yeah, we're at 5 because her and I sat down and figured it out today. So we're a little bit less than the 6, but we're at least holding our ground, and if we get grants, then we're able to supplement some of that. In order to get to that, these special assessments do input about $408,000 a year. If we were to get rid of special assessments, if we wanted to keep that same trajectory, we would have to come up with $410,000 to keep that trajectory of remaining flat. The street millage, I believe, is to 2034. I think.
No, we voted that in 21.
21, right?
So we're going, it's 10 years, so we're 31.
Yep, so we're at 31, where we've got the 575,000.
And that, sorry to interrupt, that is actually the same length of time that our bond is for. So our bond would expire, it was actually required to be that. So the bond will run out until this voted millage goes away.
So in that calculation though, so we have the charter street funds 2.5 mils, street millage 3.5, so that's 6 mil or about $980,000. If you add the special assessments, that's again very close to 2.5 mils, so that does seem to bring us to 8.5 mils.
Well, you have an arrears, or you have a negative in the local street fund, so if you start backing out the negative in the street fund and you back out the bonding, that's almost 400,000 of that right there. So you take that out, you have available for construction around 5 mils.
I see. Okay, yeah, and I was talking with Dave about this earlier. It'd be interesting to see this redone with post-COVID prices. I was talking with Jason about this. He said a lot of these services, 30-40% increases since this was done.
Okay, so I started in 2020.
Okay, yeah.
I've been doing road construction for years, and yes, we did see a lot of increases in materials. So the prices we're estimating and quoting right now are post-COVID dollars.
In this chart?
In that chart, and I also have a chart in front of me. I went through, I have every special assessment district we've done and the final costs of both what the city paid, the residents paid, and what the final cost of the project was. And then I broke that out to cost per mile, because, and every project is different. You can't compare, every project can't necessarily be compared apples to apples, but it's pretty close. So for a mile of road reconstruction, you can estimate, if we did a full mile of road reconstruction, you'd be paying about $2.4 million for that road. And when I look at all the projects through here, those numbers are hitting right close to what that average is. Our milling and resurfacing projects like we're proposing for Berry Street is running right at $400,000. That's for a full mile. And the prices that are in the resolution for, just so that you know what my engineer's estimates were, are for the actual mileage that we're doing. I just ran it up to what an actual mile was. We very rarely do projects that are full mile in length, just because city blocks aren't.
Okay, so this is adapted to 24 prices, even though the start date is
Yeah.
2020.
Well, yes, because those were $2024. So everything in there was, even though that chart was based in 2020, all the numbers that I gave you in the one spreadsheet are $2024.
Oh, in the spreadsheet,
Yeah.
but not on this chart? Not on that
No,
chart?
I'm sorry, those are $2020. But,
Oh,
but
okay.
that is just based on road ratings, that's not cost of doing it, but the 3 mils you would get would be just shy of what we're getting now. The only thing different from 2020 to now is the rate of inflation from that point to now.
And that's, I was curious if the 6 mils would still get us on that upward trajectory with the rate of inflation.
Well, presumably you would, because
Okay.
you've been doing work on other stuff, so
Right.
you're taking roads that are a 1, and you're moving them up to an 8, 9, or 10, depending on what kind of usage. So you're moving some projects up above, and then as things are degrading, they're also falling down, because, you know, every year, they decline. I could show you a nice graph about it, but, you know, it's basically, goes like that. After a couple of years, they really start to decline quickly. If you don't do any maintenance, you just stand there and look at it.
Right.
So the cost of construction has gone up quite significantly. Obviously, that's across the board. I track all the numbers. All the estimates I do are based on what our local numbers are, because you can't compare how much it costs us to buy a ton of asphalt against Jackson, because Jackson has a couple plants sitting right in their backyard, so they don't have haul distance. So our cost is more than what the city of Jackson pays because of the haul distance and our proximity to the plants. So there's a lot of things that are regionalized, and the state sees that too. They break their numbers out by different regions of the state. So all the estimates I do are based on what our local numbers are. And I check them against what the state uses for this region, and we're pretty close.
Okay, great. Councilman Wolfram?
So the cost though, does that include like sewer in addition to that? Like up on Westwood, there was a lot of sewer work that went on.
No, because sewer and water are enterprise funds, and you already pay for maintenance of those in your monthly bill for water and sewer, we do not specially assess water and sewer work. Now, we have to distinguish between sanitary and storm sewer. You don't get special assessed for sanitary sewer, but storm sewer is affiliated with the roadside, and you do pay in the special assessments for storm sewer. There is no funding source for storm sewer, and storm sewers are built to preserve roads. So that gets rolled into that special assessment. So on the Westwood project, all the storm sewer that was constructed, plus the road, the curb and drives and all that stuff, is included in the road special assessment. And I actually pull out everything that had to do with water and sewer, and that's funded by a whole different fund.
So can you, was all this, the only sewer that was done on the Westwood project was for storm?
No, there was sanitary and water.
So both?
The road side of that project is $2.7 million. That's what we spent in the Westwood, both phases of Westwood with storm and road was $2.7 million. On top of that, we had almost $100,000 or just shy of $1 million in sanitary work, and then I can't remember right off the top of my head what water is. But all told, the project was $4.8 million, so that other $2 million was water and sewer.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Okay, with regard to the report that I gave you, pursuant to the charter, and you giving me direction 90 days or so ago to present you with estimates and construction drawings, that's what's included in your packet. You will see in this council report the 3 projects we've proposed. Arch Avenue is going to be delayed a little bit. I have some other work that needs to be done because it's got some federal funding tied to it. But Monroe and Berry, if these were to be approved in the future, those projects would be done sometime this summer or fall. Today, we're not asking for any action on this. This is just to present you with the design drawings and the estimates for these projects. We will be coming back to you in a future date for a special assessment district public hearing.
Yes, the plan would be to set the public hearing for, on February 3rd.
No, March 3rd.
We'll set the public hearing on February 3rd for March 3rd.
Yes, we come to you to request the public hearing. Sorry, I apologize.
Good. Anything else? Okay. I think we're gonna have public services to discuss our approach to Berry Street in the next couple weeks here. If anyone would like to attend for that, figure out what we'll do since it doesn't look like the SAD is going to work for that project. Okay, good. Thank you, Kristen. Airport hangar repairs, I would also like to send this to public services to get some more specifics on this. But we can describe it now. The city is proposing to spend $105,000 to repair some hangars in the hopes that this would allow us to raise prices and generate more long-term revenue. I requested this because one of my primary goals is to get some of these general fund items revenue neutral so that that number that we see that's coming from the general fund can be greatly increased to pay for roads and infrastructure. Dave, would you like to add anything here?
Sure. As was stated, this has been something council has been interested in getting the airport to be self-sufficient. There were a couple things that came up. One, this kind of goes to some of the questions or comments that Ms. Gaynor had indicated or mentioned about the demolition. That capital improvement plan has changed and there is no intent to demolish those hangars. We were able to get the state MDOT arrow to allow us to leave them in place, thus allowing us to have the storage. If we demolish them, there's no money for us to get to actually build new. So we were able to convince them to allow us to go around the old terminal, which would then give us enough distance to keep the hangars into the future. So taking that into consideration, in order to increase the rent for them, they're in very bad shape. The airport itself was built in 1963, and when I came on board about 10 years ago, I'd say it was in very poor shape. It just was not being maintained. We were able to turn that around with the management of the airport, fuel sales, and seeking out grants from the state for different projects. And we're getting to the point where it's actually a very strong economic development driver for the community as well as the county. And you have to keep in mind, because I know people will question when I say the county, whether it's Litchfield, whether it's Jonesville, those businesses that are in those communities that utilize the airport have employees that live right here in Hillsdale. Probably the majority of them live in Hillsdale. So providing support to businesses outside of our community within the county has an economic impact to our residents, particularly the ones that have employment there. As I indicated, we have our largest employer is a very big user of the airport, Hillsdale College, for goings and comings, Meyer, Ridgecraft. There's a number of businesses that use the airport, and Steve could attest to this, as he does the fueling and the maintenance of the airport, and I'll have Steve come up. But we looked at, just to remind you, we came to the council to renovate our larger corporate hangar, And the council approved about $50,000 to demolition the inside and fix that up. And Steve did that work, and was able to get that done under budget. And we actually have a hangar now that we can use to store our maintenance equipment, to rent out for big jets that are coming in and want to park outdoors. So we are utilizing that to increase our revenue. And that's what the plan is here, is that the smaller, large hangar would be fixed, the doors are inoperable. That's come in front of you a couple times. This seems to be the best method to get that done. And then our T hangars out there, our smaller hangars, are in horrible shape as well. So those two sets of hangars and the terminal hangars is what's included in here. The $105,000, I believe, will get the airport to a point where we can be self-sufficient in 3 years. I spoke to Mayor Pro Tem Palladino this afternoon, and the plan is that right now we're at about $150,000 that comes from the general fund for the airport, and it's always been $120,000 to $150,000. Maybe a little less earlier on, but since I've been here, it's been $120,000 to $150,000, and we've improved the airport. But the plan would be that with the fuel sales and the increased rent, we would be able to reduce that $150,000 down $50,000 in this new budget is my goal. So it would be $100,000. The following year, we'd get it down to $50,000, and then in the third year, it would be down to where it would be self-sufficient. But I would say, caution you, that in order to achieve that, you've got to invest and have the facilities that people are willing to pay the rents to do that. I believe with fixing them up, we can do that, and we can hit that target of 3 years. Steve's the one who put the numbers together, and he did it the same way he did the previous large hangar. Steve, do you want to come up?
Sure.
And I would say that my thoughts are that we would look at option number 1, which was increasing the T hangars to 200 and the corporate hangar 1 to 900, which would kind of get us to the numbers, which would have a payback of about 2 to 4 years, depending how you looked at it. Steve, you've worked on these since you've been here.
Basically what I did is I went up to the T hangars. The T hangars that we currently have, the headers that the railings hooked up to are all rotted out. I mean, Mayor, when you were up there, we pointed it up to you where you can actually see right straight through the wood. These buildings were built back in the 60s and never maintained, never taken care of, never kept up. If you back up 6 months ago, all these buildings were gonna be ripped out, okay? Due to Ginger and Dave working with the state has agreed to allow us to take the taxiway out and around them, which is gonna save us millions of dollars because we won't have to build hangars, okay? For $105,000, what we're going to end up and do is we're gonna take all the doors down, we're gonna replace all the wood, replace all the tin on the doors, replace the headers, replace the tracks, okay? Replace the wood on the bottom, okay? Now I'm saying replace all, but quite honestly, once we start digging into it, a lot of these tracks and stuff like that will be usable, okay? And if you remember, Ray, we ripped out all the offices out of corporate number 2 hangar, okay? Now when I put these numbers together, I didn't have a chance to go out and count all my wood, okay? I put together, we're buying everything, okay? But with this being said, what I've been doing with my assistant, we've been going through, taking the wood that we've ripped out of the offices and started building hangar doors, okay? We actually have all the frames for the hangar doors built for one whole row of hangar minus 20 boards, okay? And then the next step we started looking at, these were all built out of 2x6s. Now we started looking at, okay, what can we do to save more money? So we can build them out of 2x4s. So the price you see here, I mean, I had 2 weeks to put the numbers together before I went on vacation for Christmas, okay? I can make it better, okay? I'm looking at 1.7 years to turn around as far as the payback, okay? In turn, then what that will do is will give us hangars that are usable, we can increase the rent, okay? And it's just, it's a win-win. So, what questions do you have?
Yeah, I think it's important to, as I mentioned earlier, the airport's been there since 1963
Yes.
is when it was built. Our current manager, Ginger, was actually a kid when that was being built. For those of you who don't know Ginger, she was a corporate pilot for many years and came back to Hillsdale. And she has a great relationship with the state and all the pilots that come in because she was a pilot and she understands airports and people enjoy working with her. But it's also important for you to recognize that we can't just get rid of the airport. We've taken a lot of federal money, and I say we, the city has, over the years that it's been built, to get it to the point where it is. And shutting down an airport doesn't happen. You have to pay a substantial amount of money back. It's figured out. It just does not occur. But that being said, it's being maintained better than it ever has. It's making money, and we're moving in the right direction. Steve's help, Ginger's help, Ashley's help. So what we presented is for Steve to finish the rest of the hangars at the 105,000 not to exceed, and then
Just to give you an idea, we actually had a construction company come in, Ken Hodge, I'm sorry. And I had him take a look at doing some quoting and stuff like that. For us just to do hangars 1, 2, and 3, the maintenance hangar and the terminal building was $113,000 for one building. Okay, that's paying somebody to do it. Okay, my time is free because I'm already an employee of the airport. Okay, these numbers here are including Ashley's wages, are my assistant's wages. So everything's included into this price, and we can do all the hangars, and that's including painting, doors, redoing the vents on the end of the building. So when a plane comes into the airport, it's a nice looking facility. All the doors work. Right now, we have to use the tractors to open some of these doors on our T hangars. Okay, so I mean, it's pretty bad shape.
Great, thank you, Steve.
I just want to say one last thing, because I was looking at the letter. As I mentioned earlier, and I want to just reiterate, the airport has always received between 100 to 150,000 thereabouts for its annual operating budget. No money was ever reallocated from the roads to pay for the airport. As you can see, and that was part of the presentation that Kristen gave from the gas taxes, there's no reassigning of money or taking money from the roads. The money didn't have roads. The roads didn't have money. And in order to get money back out of the general fund or different areas, we will have to make changes to the level of services that we provide to the community. If we get the airport self-sufficient and we can wean it off that 150,000, there's 150 towards that 400,000. Other things, they're going to be tough questions, whether it's recreation. We can't get rid of Dial-A-Ride because there's federal money involved. It would ultimately probably come down to staffing levels we want for important things that people feel are important, whether it's recreation, whether it's public safety. I would say that the city here really is run pretty slim. After about 2010, when we had the financial crisis, they eliminated all of the extra fat. There might be one or two that one could argue about, but we will have to make cuts in order to save $400,000 beyond the airport if we get it self-sufficient. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Bruns.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Palladino that I would just like to see this sent to public services. especially if we're talking about being able to get this 105 number down. So get some kind of lower number in there, have public services take a look at it. And for my part, maybe Mr. Mackey can provide this information for me. I'd like to see the plan towards revenue neutrality. That way I have a sense. I feel like I don't have any idea other than that, it says it's 3 years out here. I would just like to see the total expenditures coming down the pike as we move towards revenue neutrality. I mean, are there other six-figure expenses coming to make that happen? If so, I'd like to know about them ahead of time.
Yes, very good, agreed. I think this plan is far better than the plan of renting them and foregoing revenue for 10 years. I mean, I talked about it, I really don't like that plan. I think this is far better, I agree. I think for public peace of mind, for all of our knowledge of it, we should get together, ask questions to Dave at Public Services, and present a comprehensive plan. Dave has floated 3 or 4 options that I don't even think have come up at council meetings that I think everyone should be sort of clued in on, and we get a full plan. It's not just a piecemeal here, we're buying things there, but this is the total picture. This is what you're buying into if you vote yes on this proposal. I think that would be good for the public, good for council. Any other? And great, yeah, Steve will give you a first-class tour of the airport if you're interested. It's a good time. Yes, Councilman Soha.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Steve, for your work on this and for coming out of retirement to serve the city. I appreciate that. But you had told me, I just wanted to get this on record, that the extra cost for renting our clients that we already have are willing to pay the increased price.
Nobody likes to see the rent increased, but quite honestly, they understand it. I mean, they're willing to pay the extra money for a better facility. I spend a lot of the time talking to our current clients, okay? Going through what we're looking at doing and stuff like that. That's how I get my ideas, okay? It's just something that I don't come up with. I use everyone around me. I mean, that's the best way to get the best information. They have no issue paying extra for a better facility.
So you're saying they are willing?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Then I also would like these T-hangers were built in the 50s, 60s? How?
I think 1964 is when they were built, okay?
So what would you just estimate, and we won't hold you to this obviously, but like what's the life of the new construction?
Well, I mean, you figure
50 years.
these buildings or these doors and stuff has lasted, 40, 60 years now? I am going to be rebuilding them the exact same fashion that they currently are. Okay, I'm using the exact same pattern. So you're looking at getting another 60 years out of them.
Thank you for that. Then I have 2 suggestions, and I kind of wanted to vote on this tonight, but I'm kind of liking your idea of giving it to committee because I was thinking of an inflationary clause. Right, one of the things that we've struggled with as a city is our rates don't go up incrementally. Maybe we could figure something out there so that the rates will just always have a 5% increase or whatever we determine is compatible and that our clients would be willing to pay. And then, Steve, do you know what our competitors are charging? Are we in the rate with Coldwater and Adrian and Jackson? Are we lower, the same-ish? Don't need exact numbers, I'm just curious.
I'm gonna say we're probably a little bit lower than some of the other facilities around. But you gotta consider the condition that we're in, okay? When you have doors where all the wood is rotted out on the inside of it, the only thing that's actually holding these doors together is the tin that's on the outside of them. I mean, these buildings are that bad, okay? It's something that you guys cannot keep putting off, okay? It's something that we need to start working on, okay? Another thing to consider on is if I'm not there, who else is going to do it? Okay? So, I mean, I live for projects, that's what I do. If there's no projects, I'm not staying.
appreciate that. Josh, you're still chair of the public services, correct? Well, I'm on public services. We'll have a meeting here this month and get it on one of the next 2 agendas.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that needs to be done. I mean, the airport has been neglected for so long that these buildings need addressed.
Well,
Yes.
I did the numbers. The rent increases will give us about an extra 32,000. Just the increases is an extra 32,000 to the airport fund revenue. Total would be about 65. So, a year just in the rent income.
Thank you for putting this together. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, actually, your increase is 25,200, and then your total revenue, for everything after the increases for option 1 is 61,200, roughly. Okay?
Good, thank you. This is, I think, far better than
I agree.
contracting it out, doing it in-house. That is. Okay, good. Sorry to keep everyone. I think that's it. Is that it? All right. We don't have any miscellaneous reports. We don't have any proclamations. We have one reappointment to the Airport Advisory Committee. Dave Hamilton, great man. I don't think he's here. This is a reappointment. Any questions on Dave?
Move to reappoint Dave Hamilton to the Airport Advisory Committee.
Second.
Motion to reappoint from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Morrissey. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. General public comment. You may speak on whatever your heart so desires. The podium is open.
I guess the airport can be, you wanna start the clock? If the airport can be up sufficient in 2 to 3 years, I think that's great. I don't know who's doing the paperwork or the pencil work, but I guess I don't know why that wasn't done years ago. You talked about Comcast. Some of you voted to give Comcast a contract. The council members have. Unless you abstain because it's a conflict of interest. But they do pay the city a good lump of money, which, would go someplace. So you can't just cut down the Comcast for what they're doing. They're trying to do the same thing you guys are trying to do about the airport. They're trying to raise their rates and make money. I think one of your very first projects, and I think it should have been started a long time ago, is fix the charter. That's not gonna be a 2-minute job, and I haven't heard anybody say anything about fixing it. I mean, people have said you want to, but I haven't heard of any committees or read any minutes where anybody's done anything about it, other than say we need to. Dave talked about the county's largest employer, and I'm gonna speak on this again. They got 750 migrant seasonal workers up there. So, the people of Hillsdale, or the people that work in Hillsdale aren't part of the seasonal migrant workers that work at the college. And 93% of them are minimum wage. And that comes from the Collegian about 2 months ago. So it's fact, because they're the ones that said it, so. That's all I have, thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Hi, Shannon.
Hello. Just some quick comments. We all agree the roads are bad. We know that. And we know there's money set aside for the roads. We also know there's $3.9 million that is in the capital improvement fund. We also know that somewhere down the line, we're supposed to get $300,000 from the college plus a $1,700,000 endowment they're supposed to set up for the vacating of the street. So we're still waiting on those funds. So there are funds out there that can be allocated to help stop the special assessments. Between all of the money coming in and divide this out, maybe they're not gonna be a whole $5,000, take them down to $2,000, give people a break. I live over by Elm Court. On Elm Court, when they were doing hospice, that Elm Court, the people over there were asked, each of them for Elm Court, to provide $5,000 per person. There's like 4 or 5 houses on Elm Court, $25,000 to fix Elm Court. They said no, they just couldn't afford it, and so they left it, and they left it damaged. They tore that whole road up. If you go over there and look, you're gonna find damage that was done from the equipment they were fixing the drain by hospice. And like I said, I live right there. So there is money that can be allocated for special assessments. If we can find money to work on an airport, and that's what I meant on that letter when I said the money is being allocated from the roads to the airport. If we use capital improvement funds for the airport, why can't we use capital improvement funds to help offset those special assessments? That's what I meant in that letter. So it does come, if we didn't have the airport taking all of this and draining our community, that money could be used for roads. I'm glad that the airport is getting upgraded and the doors, and I'm glad there's not gonna be any demolishing. I mean, that's gonna save, according to this, like $662,000. They still have to, that's what they allocated back for 27. We still have another $2 million coming up in 28, according to this improvement plan for taxiway and electrical vault construction. So there is a lot more money going back to the airport. So if we didn't have so much going to the airport, then people could get help with special assessments. We could get our roads fixed. So that's what I meant by reallocating.
Thank you, Shannon. Yes, completely agreed. Any other public comment? Okay. We'll close the voting. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have one thing I wanna clarify because I just keep hearing the same misinformation. The $2 million that we're speaking about at the airport, that is money provided to us from the federal government. The city of Hillsdale is not spending $2 million at the airport if it's in the plan. We have a small portion of it, but every year the airport receives a certain amount of funding. It's $160,000 each year to maintain the airport and do projects. So when the capital improvement plan's put together, it factors in federal money, a small portion from the state and from the local governments, like between the two of them, like 5% of the project. So just because it says $2 million, that's not what the city's putting into it. The majority of that, just like the terminal received $2.5 million in federal money. So we saved up for 7 years to pay our $500,000 thereabouts for the new terminal. But that being said, the airport is not draining this community, and the community's not putting multiple millions of dollars into it. That is actually coming from federal and state funds as well. And that I just need to make that clear because I've been hearing that for several weeks, and that's not how the airport is funded and how those projects work.
How are they paying for the new?
Shannon, please wait till the end of the meeting to ask any questions. I'd be happy to chat with you. I'm sure Mr. Mackey would as well. Thank you. Yes, Councilman Bentley.
I'd like to ask Mr. Mackey a question about that. The $105,000, is that matched with anything? And or is that part of the general 100 to 160 out of the general fund? So that's our money.
Yeah, that's out of, that is, 105 was requested out of the general fund and capital improvement fund, yes, for facilities.
Yeah, these are some of the capital improvement plan is not intuitive, unfortunately. So these are some of the things I would like in the new plan. It's like, okay, if we're gonna spend 2 million, what's the city portion in this year? And then in this year, how does that factor in with all the improvements? Another thing I'd like to see is if we're gonna take 100,000 out of the capital improvement fund for the airport improvements, could we match that or find some sort of agreement for the Berry Street project so that that doesn't stall? So I think just a lot of things that need to be negotiated and spelled out a little bit more clearly for the public and for everyone on council. Anything else on your city manager's report, Mr. Mackey?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. I think it's council comment. My screen keeps going dead. Yes, council comment. Any comments from council? Councilman Soha.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. One more day? No. Is that it? 12 days of Christmas? Tomorrow's the last day. Live it up. Take the day off work. Yes, Councilman Bentley.
Mr. Mackey, who's running that, traffic calming, the road diet meeting? What's that gonna look like? Could you just give us a little call?
So, Alan Beaker, our planning and zoning administrator, is kind of handling that. But we will have representatives from MDOT as well as the engineer who did the engineering studies for MDOT, because much of it is funded through grant funding. So there will be multiple agencies here.
But, of the city staff, will you be there, or will it just be Mr. Beaker?
There will be city staff there, yes.
Any other, such as?
Jason Blake will be there, the DPS director. I will probably be there pending no other meeting that night. I'm not sure if the city engineer will be there, but there will be a number of city staff there.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone should show up to that. It could actually have huge repercussions for the city. I think I'm sort of on the same page as you, Matt, that this, the law of unintended consequences. Might be better to leave that sort of thing alone, but I'm interested to hear the presentation. Any other comments? Councilman Soha.
Thank you. Mr. Mackey, would you please remind us of the date and time and location?
Yeah, it's 6 p.m. Thursday, January 16th. Projected to go 6 to 8 p.m. Thursday, January 16th for the Broad Street M99 traffic calming plan. Okay, other comments? Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Morrissey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned.